Welcome to The Hanley Effect, a podcast by the Hanley Foundation designed to educate, change minds, and save lives. Our goal is to inspire you, showcase our innovations, and change the conversation about addiction and mental health. Join us as we unravel stories of resilience, recovery, and hope.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to The Hanley Effect. I'm John Dibin.
I'm Rachel Dosicle.
How you doing, Dr. D?
I'm good, Dr. D. How are you?
I'm very well. We've got somebody that I had the honor of working with over the past, in the past, as our guest today, and I'm super excited. As always, I gotta figure out something else to say.
Excited.
But I am. This is a person who I've worked with and seen her work over the years, and she does some really cool, unique work that I want to, everybody to learn about. And so I'm excited. We have Jen Goggin on the show with us today.
So exciting.
Welcome,
Thank
Jen.
you. Good morning. I'm excited to be home again, right? Hanley's home.
We were just talking about, when was the last time you were here? And it's been over a decade.
Yeah.
And yet when I thought about it, it felt like just yesterday. And you're still, I'm just glad you're part of this community and doing this work. Jen is for those who don't know Jen is a licensed mental health counselor, and she is a somatic experiencing practitioner. And I want to give her an opportunity to talk about like what somatic experiencing is, but also always on our show, what we like to ask our guests is, would you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? And then what you want to tell us about your story that got you to where you are today.
Ooh, that's a really good one.
We have fun.
So I'm Jen Goggin, and I've been working as a therapist since 2007. And I started off in like the mental health clinics of like Bridgeport, Connecticut. So I did drug court. I worked with the homeless. I was exposed to a lot of great teachers and a lot of great supervisors really early on, and kind of like, just in environments that a lot of people weren't really exposed to. And part of me misses that kind of work. I was lucky enough at one point in my life, which is probably one of the darkest moments. I was a single mom. I was really lost in like what I really wanted to do, what was my life purpose. And a friend said, you know what, you should try this work with this person who was a body worker at the time. She's starting this somatic training, and I think you'd really like it, because I was having like a lot of health issues. And then how did that translate into therapy? I was working the nervous system with her and learning exactly what I was being trained in, but it brought up a lot of issues around, like I was relinquished at birth. I was adopted. So I was given away at a time where it was very like the mother was completely cut off. And what we know about kids in the womb, they pick up on everything.
Right.
Like we've got the research to substantiate this.
Right.
And so I came into life kind of in recovery.
Wow.
And so my life's journey has always been about like learning about that process of being adopted and how it's, shaped my world and how I was brought up and what my thinking was. And, I wish I had more therapeutic interventions when I met my birth mom. So
you did eventually meet her.
I did. And
How old were you?
When I finally met her, when I reached out to her. So I did a search when I left for college. I didn't want my mom or dad to know that I did it. So I, was becoming more of an adult, and I put an inquiry out to a social worker who I ended up meeting when I was working in one of the social services industries in Bridgeport. It's funny how life just comes full circle. So anyway, they said, if we don't find her, in 3 months when you go back to college, you will, she's probably deceased or we'll never find her. So I didn't hear anything. So I just kind of went off to the sophomore, school year and didn't think about it. And then a full year later, I get this note in the mail while they were still, doing mail. And they said they found her, and it took them so long because she moved to Indiana.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that's where that's where she originally was from.
And you were in Connecticut.
And I was in Connecticut.
Right.
so she was open to corresponding with me, and we wrote letters for the longest period of time. And throughout the course of my life and all the changes, I would lose touch with her. She'd move, and then somehow I would find her. And so it was really this really wonderful process of, learning about that whole part of my world that really isn't, and what
Mm-hmm.
makes me me. But in somatic experiencing, I did a lot of work around issues that I didn't even know the story about until much later. And when we talked about SE being well researched, it has some research behind it, but it doesn't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
But anecdotally, it does. So my body knew the story before I got the exact information that this was the truth.
What I love about that is I think sometimes people think about therapists and they think, therapists are people who have all the answers and they have it all together. And it's, but you're talking about learning through not just books, not just, internships, but also your own work and your own practice,
Yeah.
which I think the best therapists, right, do their own work as well.
I don't, and obviously I don't know any other way,
I agree.
And
Can,
well, what's interesting is that, even in high school, I went to a Catholic high school, they picked me out to be a peer minister. So I always had that way about me.
Mhm.
But in the family that I was raised in, it wasn't culturally acceptable. So I never went that route. And then when I understood somatic work, I was like, oh, this makes sense. And this is why I want to go to grad school. Like, this is why I want the degree. And
Right.
then things that I learned in school were substantiating why it was so important to learn nervous system regulation. It's not only for wellness, but the stress diathesis model that we learn when they hand us the DSM. First they say, don't diagnose yourself, don't diagnose your family, don't diagnose your friends. But learning like mental health issues, yes, there's genetic components, but a stressor is usually the catalyst
Mhm.
for somebody to see those symptoms or to experience them.
For our listeners, talk about what you mean when you talk about somatic experiencing.
So it's many things, right? And so when I was working with clients here, we talk about, Judy Griselle, who came in and talked about the A process and B process of addiction, would be like, well, what keeps you in A process?
Can you talk about what is A process and B process?
So it's that good feeling that you have when you say take a drink. And that's why you keep drinking, because you want to get back to that uptick in euphoria as well as that relaxation response.
Mhm.
So if I was meeting with a client here, I'd be like, well, what are you doing in the milieu that might open you up to more of an A process being sober? And so we don't have that B process anymore. Because what's the point of being sober if you're not having fun or
Right.
you're not feeling good in your body, right? So somatic experiencing, when I'm doing it with trauma clients, I had a 9/11 survivor that I worked with, and I was telling John a little bit about this, but we didn't start with the narrative of what happened with her that day. She came in to see me because she was stuck with her process with her life coach. She was a high functioning lawyer, had her own practice, and was trying to scale her business, and then suddenly couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And they're like, what happened? And the life coach was very astute and said, I think you're something's coming up in your body around what happened to you that day. And so we work the nervous system. So it's regulation and learning resiliency in your nervous system. You start out here. You don't start with the day of. You literally do not start with ground zero, right? We talked about sensations in the body, and when you feel that uptick in, anxiety that we all feel, if we're late for work or, your kid's not listening and you need to get them to school on
Right.
time or whatever. But when you're in a clear response, your nervous system will go right back down and learn how to relax. If there's trauma, it tends to go higher and higher, and you get stuck in that anxiety till your body can't handle the anxiety anymore, and then you feel that shut down, which is more in the parasympathetic. So anyway, with her, she trusted me, but we built a relationship. There's that renaissance that happens between therapists and clients, that relationship building. So she trusted me. She trusted the work that we were doing and following sensations and feeling a discharge in her body, because that's what happens when you work Peter Levine calls it the trauma vortex,
Mm-hmm.
where your body warehouses, what happened to you that day, right? It can conceptualize all the possibilities, and I don't want to trigger anybody else's traumas to name something, but I think everybody could get the idea.
Right.
And then we work with that part of you that is so resilient, or that part of you that we call resource, and we titrate them together. And it's almost like it just washes away and your body lets go of something. So sometimes there's a lot of tingling that can happen, or there's body movements that happen that the client needs to do. And I'm like, no, trust that. They're like, I look weird. I'm like, no, I'm doing it with you, and I'll do it with them. But I make them do it really slowly, because somatic movements and reworking your nervous system is a very slow process, where our culture is so built into rushing and doing something. So after a few sessions, she came in, she had her session, and she's like, I'm ready to talk about what happened that day. So what I
I love
did
that.
That's
with her,
It's huge.
and she was a great client, she's a great example. She said to me, okay, and I'm like, we've got this, we're going to do it. And we went through the moment by moment kind of snapshot that was sticking with her about what happened that day that felt incomplete with her process, her therapeutic process. And we did it really slowly. She relived it through sensation and not so much through narrative. And she unfortunately that day saw a colleague die. So there was a lot of, survivor's guilt that she
Right.
was processing. And it made sense. She's building a business, right? And if I have this survivor's guilt, how am I going to,
Oh,
you
wow.
know, be bigger, right? If I'm
Right.
holding this down. And then in her story, she talked about how she used law to help people that were, trying to get money and help from recovering from, what they had gone through that day as well. So it just all kind of came together.
And let me just ask her, just for
Mhm.
our listeners, just a couple of clarifications, things I think
Yeah.
they'd want to know. How long does this process take?
For everybody, it's different. So everybody's nervous system's a little different. I started working with some people that are involved in the neurodivergent population. Their nervous system is different than somebody else's, right? So they have a tendency to be a little bit more on the sensitive side, but they also have a tendency to be more empathic. So they tune things very quickly. So it's up to me as a practitioner to kind of gauge where they're at, and it's very much strength building. We start with resource. We don't go into the hard things just yet. We want to make sure your body can hold it, because we want you to be functioning when you leave the session. We don't want you to be back in bed. So it's a good question. And EMDR, which is, another type of trauma therapy, they do 8 sessions around a certain issue, right? With SC, it's more following the person's nervous system and their body. I've got clients that come and see me when they need a reboot, or something happens and it reminds them of something maybe that happened in their family of origin, and we'll do pockets of work together. Some people see me weekly and then they're like, okay, well, I like the fact that you have SC in your back pocket. So when it does come up and it's relevant, we'll use that. So everybody's different in that respect.
One of the things that we've heard a lot about is AI and how people have started to use AI for therapy. And thank you for laughing, because that is always my first response when I see it. One of the therapies that just absolutely could not be replaced by artificial intelligence is this type of practice. Talk a little bit about, in your words, why that connection between therapist and patient is so critically important.
Oh my gosh, because it gives it, when we go through a traumatic experience or we're feeling stressed, part of what makes it traumatizing is that we're alone,
Mm.
right? And AI cannot replicate that kind of connection or eye
Beautifully put.
contact,
Well,
right? Our nervous system needs to make eye contact. We
Mhm.
need to make that touch, right? It's so important in relationships. Our whole nervous
Right.
system is wired to survive around that, right? So yeah, and I laugh because I wrote a blog a couple weeks ago about how I spent a lot of time on the computer, writing my website and making all these revisions. And by the end of the day, before I had to go pick up my kids from school, I was like, I feel terrible. Like, I'm just like so off. And it's because I'm on the computer and my whole nervous system is wired to that internet.
It's exhausting.
It is. And
Yeah.
it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was back in grad school, like in 2005, they were talking about like how destructive the internet is on kids and how they're losing empathy. And now it's just,
That's 21 years ago.
I know. Well, thanks for reminding me, John.
But
We're all in the same
we're
boat
all in
here.
the same boat.
Let's just.
But right. And, I mean, yeah. And it's just increasing more and more.
Yeah. And I've had a child when I was younger and I've had kids when I'm older. And I tell you, it was so much easier back then because we didn't have that influence. You write something horrific on social media and you're an immature 10-year-old or however, like it can ruin your life.
Yeah.
I think all the time. I mean, if it existed when I was in my teens and 20s, I'd be bad.
I'd be in big trouble.
Right. But yeah, it makes total sense.
But if we look at it too through the lens of addiction and
Mhm.
how easy it's making everything that we're trying to help a client with,
Right.
like it's in everything.
Right.
So
There is. I was met with a mental health team in Ohio last week, and there was a psychologist and a psychiatrist who actually are studying this a lot. And one of the things the psychologist said is that what we're looking at is how to, because people are using AI for all sorts of things, and as therapists, we actually need to be able to address the fact that most people coming to us have got an AI therapist. And it's doing probably some damage.
Mhm.
But especially your work, one thing the AI cannot do is look in my eye, is read me. And it sounds like so much of your work
the training, I
is
mean, it's 3 years long and it's really extensive and it's really deep. And it's like people are like, "Well, how do you know certain things?" Because if we work virtually, and I'm like, it's almost like I'm trained to just pick up on the littlest nuance
Right.
and use it as an opening and intervention. And it's hard to explain. You just learn it as you go along. And I think if you're attracted to work, you have a certain kind of like instinct and ability to do it or to really do well with it,
Mhm.
And that's why you're doing it, is
Right.
because you've got, that ability.
That's an important thing, I think, for people to know as well. When you're talking about 3 years of training, you're talking about after you've become a therapist,
Yeah.
after you've done that grad school, after you've done all that work, if somebody has that SE behind their name, they've had 3 years of additional training and supervision. This is not
And
a weekend.
consultation.
Yeah, it's not a weekend class.
It's a lot. And I was lucky to be in Connecticut when I did the training because I was able to take the train into New York City. So I didn't have that added expense of a hotel and flights. We had people from all over the world. Body therapies are more prominent in Europe.
Mhm.
So SC's really taught there, and they had people coming into New York that had from all different backgrounds, OTs, PTs, MDs, LCSWs, and people that are really seasoned. So early in my career, I was able to sit in this really awesome think tank and be with these leaders that were frontline of Peter Levine, because they're the ones that translated the work into, the
And
instruction.
Who's Peter Levine, for those that don't know?
He wrote Waking the Tiger, which is kind of like this real, everybody kind of knows that that's like the first line to, like, if you're going into trauma treatment or want to know more about it, he wrote a book about that. And he is, somebody that's pretty well known nowadays.
And so any therapist would know he was. So I just asked that
Yeah.
for those that aren't.
But I got clients that said, well, I read the book.
Right,
And now,
right.
like, tell me how you can benefit me,
Right.
So
Thinking about that, so I'm thinking about all these different disciplines, right? So how do you work as an SE practitioner or a therapist that does SE? So for you, is SE like the only thing you're doing? That's the only tool in your toolbox?
No, I mean, I use so it's interesting. Before I really started my career, I got really, and I think a lot of adoptees that are doing their own work are curious about their life's journey. They're really spiritual people.
Mm.
And it's just maybe that early trauma just opens up a window inside of them. And I've always had that kind of like expansive thinking. And I think that's where I resonate with you a lot is like
Mhm.
that spirituality piece.
Mhm.
And so I went to like meditation retreats and did things like that. And I actually went to the Chopra Center for Wellbeing back in like I think the late 90s. And I wanted to learn about Ayurveda and all that stuff. And there was a woman at the time, and she was actually on Oprah, and she wrote a bestseller called The Dark Side of Light Chasers. Her name
Mm.
was Debbie Ford, and she's actually from South Florida. And it's interesting how I met a lot of people when I was here, like her therapists and people that she worked with in her own recovery. So anyway, to make a long story short, I signed up to do her coaching program. This is how I became a coach and have that like, credential. I worked with her. And so it was really like young for dummies.
Ha!
And it was like working with Jung's concepts. And how did I get onto this topic? I'm like going off on the shadow work that I start. So I start with inner child and shadow work and like, SE. So she with developmental trauma. I'm always going back into that. And it's so related to IFS, which is parts work, right? So
And that's internal family systems.
yes, which is
right?
another, well, it's another buzzword in therapy, right?
Mhm.
Nowadays. So yeah, I mean, motivational interviewing. I'm trying to read your body to
Right.
see where your body wants to open to me.
Right.
Where can I make an inroad to get your life to move forward? I mean, everything that I learned here was relevant to, how I practice.
It's such a fascinating thing, I think, and especially when I love to talk to people who are not in our work, who are not therapists or and it's interesting to see how people perceive us. And, somebody I could see somebody hearing, 3 years to become an SE practitioner, and they might think like this is all you do, but human beings, we are complicated folks, and what works in one moment will not necessarily be
Right.
but there are certain principles. I'm guessing that line and guide all you do, but you have a lot of tools in your toolbox.
Yeah, and AI does not.
That's right.
And for what I was reading,
Perfect loop around.
well, they always give you what you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
That's
therapists
right.
should not give you what you want. It's what you need to get to where
I
you
love
need to
that.
be.
I love that. You need to put that in that blog
Yes.
that sucked all your energy out that day.
It's so true. There was when I was I came here. I've been here almost 22 years. I came here as a chaplain the first few years, and so you're doing just spiritual work. I remember I had a patient that we had a difficult session, and he left, and he was getting ready to leave, and he said, "Aren't you the chaplain?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Isn't chaplain supposed to just make me feel good?" I think that's one of the, are you my no work, whether it's physically getting into shape or dealing with, no work is going to feel good all the time, but the benefit and the promise of doing the work is what makes it all worth it.
Yeah. And for us, we're always growing.
Right.
Like I remember how, the guys used to make fun of me, like Mark Constantino and, the people that we reminisce about, right?
Mhm.
And he would call me Cupcake
Mhm.
because I was, Mark was so confrontational. But by working with him, I learned tools to really like build that kind of reservoir up in me in my own style. Right.
Right.
So we're always evolving when we stay in this business. You have to.
I love it.
So you're always learning. Yeah, you need to about
Mhm.
yourself, others, and concepts.
That's the truest thing. If there's ever a therapist or health professional that's like, no, I've pretty much got it all down. Run fast,
You're
run
right.
fast.
Don't go see them.
So speaking of running fast, I'm the bad guy. I always like we need to come where our time is almost up.
Circling.
But what we love to do is give you the last word, and the last word to our audience. And think about, like I've said, it's a wide range of people and it's a broad audience. But given the last word, what is one thing that you would like people to hear from Jen Goggin today?
No matter where you are at in the journey, there's always hope. Always.
And I know you know that at all sorts of levels.
So many.
And you
ways.
speak that from authority. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
having me.
being
This is
here.
awesome.
This was incredible.
The time
Incredible.
I know it feels that, right?
We have to have you back.
I'd love to do that. I
Yeah.
love talking with you guys.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
just,
so
you
good.
are, we are, this is our community and this is who we serve and we are on the same team. So we'll have you back anytime.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
yes. And you're part of the Hanley family
I know.
then and
I was
now.
telling John, anytime I run into somebody, it's like, oh, it's Hanley. There's a bunch of people I was supposed to meet and never did. And then I finally met them in person. They're like, I know you. And it's Hanley family.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for
So
being
good.
here.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. This
Dr.
was
D.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was super fun as always.
Thank you, Dr. D. Appreciate you.
You too. And for everybody who's listening or tuning in, thank you. We'll see you next time on The Hanley Effect.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for the Hanley Effect. To learn more about our programs, visit hanleyfoundation.org or call 844-502-4673.